Chapter 1861. Return. Demon Sovereign replied, "Are you talking about that woman with the twin dragon martial souls? She perished alongside Chen Zhenji. I must say, fiercely loyal woman. What?" Everyone from Shrek Academy and the Tang sect, as well as all of the other powerful beings present, was stunned to hear this. Chen Zhenji was dead? He was the most powerful being in the military and quite likely the most powerful being in the world as well. Thinking back to that enormous energy storm, everyone's hearts immediately sank. In terms of power, Long Yeyu was only slightly inferior to Chen Zhenji, yet she was dead as well. The deaths of these two limit Douluos would undoubtedly have a massive impact on the entire human army. Yali's body was trembling gently with grief and rage. She and Long Yeyu were the only two remaining limit Douluos of Shrek Academy. Now that Long Yeyu was dead, she was the only one left among Shrek Academy's older generation, and she was overcome by sorrow. Demon Sovereign slowly raised her hands, and dense purplish golden light began to spread through the air. Even the opposing limit Douluos could sense the gap between them and her. Vyuna heaved a faint sigh as she slowly raised her silver dragon spear, and a determined look appeared in her large purple eyes. She flapped her dragon wings to slowly propel herself forward, and her silver dragon dancing Keeling battle armor shimmered as her aura began to elevate. Among all of the people present, it seemed that only she could possibly be a match for Demon Sovereign. The entire battlefield fell into a brief period of placidity. The abyssal army was gathered around the abyssal passageway down below, while the human army was repairing the defensive lines. The air units were also appraising the battle from afar. The massive explosion that had taken place on the Arctic Ocean told them that the outcome of this battle was ultimately going to be decided by only a few people in the end. Only the powerful beings who truly stood at the pinnacle of this world could truly sway the final result. Demon Sovereign had finally appeared, and the fact that even Chen Zhenji had fallen by her hands was a clear testament to just how powerful she was. However, Vyuna wasn't backing down in the slightest against such a fearsome foe, and just her courage alone was enough to win her many admirers, particularly among the Spirit Pagoda camp. Ever since the reconstruction of Shrek Academy, they had constantly been repressed, and it had been a very long time since they had been in the limelight for the right reasons. In that instant, all of them became fully accepting of Vyuna as their leader. This was what their chairwoman should be doing. Yali took a deep breath to force back her own feelings of grief. They were fighting for all of humanity, and grieving wasn't going to change anything. All they could do was rise up and face the enemy with everything they had. Vyuna slowly raised her silver dragon spear, but right at this moment, a streak of golden light suddenly erupted into the heavens. An indescribable aura then spread across the entire battlefield at an astonishing speed, and it was as if the ruler of this world had arrived. The Arctic Ocean in the distance also seemed to be celebrating the emergence of this streak of golden light, and the waves were pounding thunderously in exultation. In the instant that she sensed this aura, Demon Sovereign's expression immediately changed drastically, and she exclaimed, "It can't be. He really came back." Despite the brave front she had put on when facing Chen Zhenji, sensing the aura of the man who had taken the life of her husband 20,000 years ago still struck fear deep into her heart. She finally understood that Chen Zhenji hadn't just been bluffing. The streak of golden light had come directly from the secondary tree of life, which was being heavily guarded by a large number of troops. In contrast with Demon Sovereign's shock and horror, Vyuna's eyes glazed over momentarily as she sensed the arrival of this streak of golden light, but a look of elation then instantly appeared on her face. He was back. This aura belonged only to him. Finally, in this crucial moment, he had returned. The golden light only paused momentarily above the secondary tree of life before flying directly toward this battlefield. Everyone looked on as the golden light approached, as if they were awaiting the arrival of the protagonist of this story. In the next instant, he appeared at the center of the battlefield. Golden light covered every single inch of his body, and the golden light was intermingled with a soft rainbow tone. He was encased in a suit of majestic battle armor, and in his right hand was the golden dragon spear, while in his left hand was the sea god's trident. Tang Wuling was back. Demon Sovereign was momentarily stunned by the sight of this golden figure before blurting out the question, "You're Tang San?" Not only did Tang Wuling falter slightly upon hearing this, everyone else present was also quite taken aback by this question. Tang San. To the abyssal creatures, this was a completely foreign name, but to all of the human beings present, Tang San was a name that was all too familiar. However, they didn't understand why Demon Sovereign would suddenly be referring to Tang Wuling as Tang San. Tang Wuling himself was more surprised than anyone else as no one knew about his relationship with Tang Wuling. Not only was someone drawing a connection between him and Tang San, it was someone that he didn't know and was clearly from the enemy camp. No, Demon Sovereign murmured to herself. "You're not him. You possess his aura, but it's completely different, and you're not as powerful as him. You're not a god yet. Who are you?" Only now did everyone around Tang Wuling catch a clear glimpse of him, and they discovered that his features seemed to have become more delicate compared to prior to his seclusion. He was already extremely handsome to begin with, but there was now a refreshing disposition about him. In particular, his eyes had become more profound, and they had changed color from black to the deep blue of the sea. The most significant change was in his hair color. His black hair had also turned blue, and it presented a stunning sight to behold as it trailed down the back of his golden dragon moon song battle armor. Anyone who saw him, regardless of whether they were male or female, would be deeply mesmerized. Tang Wuling replied, "I'm not Tang San. I'm Tang Wuling, Sea God's Pavilion Master and Tang Sect Master." Tang Wuling. "How are you related to Tang San?" Demon Sovereign interrogated. Tang Wuling was just about to reply when Yali flew over to his side and said in a grief-stricken voice, "Elder Long and Elder Chen are dead. She was the one who killed both of them." Tang Wuling couldn't help but shudder upon hearing this. He never shared much of a close bond with Chen Zhenji. He merely had a lot of respect for this lofty military figure. However, Elder Long had been present throughout his entire development journey. Following the Shrek City bombing, there was no way that Shrek Academy would have been able to make such a rapid resurgence had it not been for the support of Elder Long and Yali. For Shrek Academy, Long Yeyu was a spiritual pillar, while for Tang Wuling, she was half a teacher. It was under Elder Long's guidance that he was able to develop so quickly, and she was the true guiding force of Shrek Academy. Chapter 1862. You ask me why. Never did he think that he would emerge from his seclusion to the news that Elder Long had passed away, and tears instantly welled up in his eyes. His golden dragon spear began to emit a buzzing sound, and tremendously powerful blood essence fluctuations erupted out of his body like a tidal wave. Even his divine origin realm spiritual power was rapidly elevating, causing everyone around him to feel as if the surrounding air had become scorching hot. Even his allies were stunned by his transformation, let alone his enemies. Vyuna immediately identified the fact that he had already reached the divine origin realm, and she was astonished. This was way too fast. Even though she had already reached the divine origin realm long ago, it still took her a very long time just to recover to this level. After all, one had to face resistance from the entire plane to reach this realm. In contrast, he had only been in seclusion for a few days, yet upon his emergence, he was already at the divine origin realm. Not only that, but his powers had also reached the pinnacle of the limit Douluo level. That's right, the aura that Tang Wuling was currently giving off was of the quasi-god level. In fact, it was superior to that of the vast majority of quasi-gods. With his suit of super four-web battle armor, it could be said that he had already reached the pinnacle of the human race. This brief period of seclusion had allowed him to develop to an incredible extent. "I'm going to kill you." Tang Wuling spat through gritted teeth. With that guttural cry, he stepped forward with his left foot, and the space beneath his foot erupted into golden light as if it had already turned into solid ground. In the next instant, he shot forth directly toward Demon Sovereign as a streak of scintillating golden light. A cold light flashed through Demon Sovereign's eyes. She knew that this young man wasn't Tang San, but he had to be very closely related to Tang San as he was wielding the sea god's trident. If it weren't for the fact that he had received the blessings of the sea god, how would Tang San possibly have been able to kill her husband in the sea? Perhaps this young man was a descendant of Tang San's. In that case, he naturally had to be killed. Purplish golden light fanned out behind her, and her entire body was enveloped in a dense purplish golden aura. She encircled her arms in front of herself, and a purplish golden ball of light shot forth directly toward Tang Wuling. The commencement of the battle seemed to have lit the fuse for the entire battlefield, and Vyuna raised her silver dragon spear as she turned to the Spirit Sovereign again with a cold gaze. On this occasion, there seemed to be something different about her expression, and a powerful aura also erupted from her body. This wasn't an eruption of power, but instead an indescribable display of her powerful disposition. The Spirit Sovereign's heart shuddered slightly as he discovered that his opponent seemed to have undergone some changes. With his divine origin realm spiritual power, he was able to clearly sense this change, and if he had to describe, he would say that his opponent was getting more serious than she had been before. Aside from them, all of the other powerful beings from the Holy Spirit cult and the Abyssal Plane had also matched themselves up with opponents, and were unleashing an all-out assault on the human army. Due to the passing of Chen Zhenji and Long Yeyu, the overall power of the human army had suffered a significant drop. Right at this moment, one figure after another flew over from the distance. The one flying at the very forefront of this group was clad in a suit of bright yellow battle armor, and he was wielding a very special weapon. At first glance, it appeared to be a spear, but upon closer inspection, one would discover that the tip of the spear was soft, as if it were comprised of countless metallic threads. This was a calligraphy brush. This figure was none other than the commander-in-chief of the human army, Divine Brush Douluo. He was accompanied by Dongxian and many other powerful beings of the military. At this point, the dominance being exerted by the human army's air units and infrasonic aircrafts had restored parity to the main battlefield. It was now very difficult for abyssal creatures to try and force their way through the human army's defenses with sheer numbers alone, so the arrival of Demon Sovereign and Tang Wuling became particularly important. This battle was going to be decided by the outcome of the clash between the most powerful beings of both sides. The side that prevailed would be able to lead their army to crush the opposing army and attain the ultimate victory. As the commander-in-chief of the human army, Guanzi was naturally aware of the importance of these clashes, which was why he had arrived on the scene right away with the powerful beings of the military, temporarily delegating commander duties to Zhang Guanyun. The human army was fielding a very formidable lineup, included the likes of Guanzi, Zhang Xin, Cao Daja, Yali, Yuan and Zhenshen, Yuan and Tiandang, Tong Yue, Araheng, and Guan Yue, all of whom possessed limit level power. Under the leadership of Tang Wuling and Guyuna, they formed the backbone of the human army's resistance. Over at the Spirit Pagoda camp, there was also Leng Yaoshu, who was currently leading the powerful beings of the Spirit Pagoda in battle against the abyssal creatures. However, as she caught sight of a black figure that had appeared up above, she couldn't help but rise up into the air and appraise the figure with an intense gaze. The person she was appraising was none other than Dark Phoenix Douluo Leng, her own sister and one of the perpetrators behind Yang Ming's death. It was no exaggeration to say that all of the most powerful beings on the Douluo continent were currently gathered on this battlefield, and all of them were prepared to die in this battle. As soon as Tang Wuling lashed out, everyone else immediately followed suit, and in the blink of an eye, this section of the sky had already become a lethal realm of destruction. Terrifying energy fluctuations tinted the entire sky above the core circle of the northernmost region, and Leng Yaoshu was rushing directly toward her sister, Leng Yulai. Leng Yaoshu spread her wings, and a high concentration of fire elements began to gather around her. Why? Tell me why you did this. Leng Yaoshu's voice was trembling as she spoke. She had learned from Yali that her own sister was the one who had extracted Yan Ming's soul from his body. Instead of averting her gaze, Leng Yulai looked straight into Leng Yaoshu's eyes with a deranged look on her face. She had been captured by Zhang Xin a while ago, and she had only been released in exchange for Yan Ming's soul. Compared to last time, Leng Yulai seemed to have aged a little, but the insanity in her eyes had only grown more pronounced. Why? You're asking me why? Are you an idiot? That woman took him away from me, as your sister. Not only are you not helping me, you're interrogating me instead. You knew I had feelings for Yan Ming, yet you went and proposed to him in secret. In the end, he didn't choose you or me. You've always been a backstabbing bitch. You're no sister to me. You're a sworn enemy in my eyes. Chapter 1863, The Love Story of the Heavenly Phoenix Douluo. Leng Yulai raised her hands as she spoke, conjuring up a pair of purplish black swords of light that she slashed directly toward Leng Yaoshu. Leng Yaoshu's heart was filled with grief and fury as she also conjured up a pair of fiery swords to meet her sister's attack. In the instant the four swords clashed, tears began to gush out of Leng Yaoshu's eyes, instantly blurring her vision. Looking at her own sister at such close proximity, her heart was in such agony that she was almost unable to breathe. Indeed, she had confessed to Yan Ming. Yan Ming. Leng Yaoshu looked at the man standing before her, and she became a little transfixed. Ever since the first time she saw him, she was attracted by his indomitable spirit. The Leng family had always been a major family in the Soul Master world, as well as one of the core families of the Spirit Pagoda. Leng Yaoshu had always grown up under great care, and even before she turned 6 years of age, she had already displayed exceptional aptitude. At 6 years old, she awakened the family's martial soul, the Heavenly Phoenix, and she had innate full soul power, as well as a flame mutation that bestowed upon her extraordinary flame-wielding abilities. Her cultivation had always been smooth and rapid, and she had always been one of the brightest young talents of her generation. She had a younger sister by the name of Leng Yulai, and they were the most outstanding pair of their generation in the Leng family. Leng Yulai's Heavenly Phoenix martial soul also underwent a mutation in a positive direction during her martial soul awakening, except her mutation was of the darkness element. The Leng family didn't really care what element her martial soul turned out to be, and in fact, light, dark, and space were considered to be superior elements to water, fire, earth, and wind. Furthermore, Leng Yulai's rate of cultivation was inferior to her elder sister's by the slightest, and she was even beginning to close the gap between them, so she had always received special attention from the Leng family. According to the rules of the Leng family, the position of family leader would be passed down to one of the two sisters in the future. However, as time passed, both Leng Yaoshu and Leng Yulai displayed exceptional aptitude, and Leng Yaoshu was even outdoing her elder sister slightly in certain aspects. However, it soon came to light that Leng Yulai was developing some personality issues due to the darkness element of her martial soul. To put it simply, Leng Yulai's personality was more extreme, and she was very competitive. This wasn't necessarily a bad thing. After all, competitiveness would be a driving factor behind a cultivator's growth. However, for the heir apparent of a major family, it was not too good to be too extreme and unyielding. Thus, after both of them came of age, it was still Leng Yaoshu who was chosen to become heir to the family, and more of the resources were skewed toward her. After that, Leng Yaoshu became the vice chairman of the Spirit Pagoda with the support of her family. She and Leng Yulai had fallen in love with Yan Ming at around the same time. Leng Yaoshu loved Yan Ming for his indomitable spirit and sense of justice, while Leng Yulai loved him for his handsome appearance and unmatched power. Leng Yulai had always been more direct and immediately began aggressively pursuing Yan Ming, but Yan Ming didn't like that. Not long after Leng Yulai was rejected, Leng Yaoshu came to see Yan Ming. Greetings, Yan Ming said with a polite nod. He had a lot of respect for Leng Yaoshu. They were both among the cream of the crop of the younger generation, and Leng Yulai was very steadfast and conscientious. Ever since she became the heir of the Leng family, the family had been going from strength to strength. Despite the fact that she was related to Leng Yulai by blood, their personalities were completely different. In contrast with Leng Yulai's invasive personality, Leng Yaoshu was more subdued and introverted. Yan Ming's cultivation journey was far more extraordinary than theirs, and he was also slightly older than them. He held a lot of respect and perhaps even some fondness for both sisters, but it was still far away from love. Besides, he already had someone else in his heart. Leng Yaoshu took a few deep breaths to try and steel herself, but she still couldn't bring herself to say what she had come here to say. What is it? Do you have something to say to me? Yan Ming asked with a perplexed expression. Do you have any plans recently? Leng Yaoshu asked. Yan Ming smiled. I might go on a long journey for a while. Gaining knowledge through reading is one thing, but experiencing the world is a different thing entirely. I plan to go to the Dou Spirit continent and Douluo continent to see them for myself and to further my training. Leng Yaoshu's heart jolted slightly upon hearing this. How long will you be gone for? Yan Ming replied. Who knows? 3 years. Maybe 5 years. In any case, I'll be setting off in a few days. Leng Yaoshu's breathing became slightly more ragged, and she knew that this was perhaps her last chance to say what she wanted to say. She did her best to calm herself down, but she was still very hesitant. What's going on with you today, Ems? Leng. Yan Ming asked. A wry smile appeared on Leng Yaoshu's face. Call me Yaoshu. Yan Ming faltered slightly upon hearing this, but didn't say anything in response. Leng Yaoshu lowered her head, not daring to look into his eyes, and she continued. I've loved you for quite a few years now. Perhaps we won't have a chance to be together, but I hope to at least be on a first-name basis with you. A surprised look appeared on Yan Ming's face. In his eyes, Leng Yaoshu had always been so steadfast and professional, yet now, she was looking like a little girl that had been caught with her hand in the cookie jar. You. Leng Yaoshu seemed to have finally worked up her courage as she raised her head again to look at Yan Ming. That's right, I've loved you for a very long time. Yan Ming, I love you. I know I shouldn't have fallen in love with you considering the relationship between our Spirit Pagoda and your Shrek Academy. However, emotions are not so easy to control. I've loved you for many years already, and sometimes, I'm actually very envious of Yulai. At least she's able to express her feelings, but I can't. I didn't dare to say anything as I represent not just myself, but my entire family. But if I continue to keep quiet, perhaps I would never get another chance. Yan Ming, Tears began to flow down her face as she spoke, and she stepped forward before locking him in a tight embrace, holding on with all her might as if she were afraid of being pushed away. Yan Ming was completely rooted to the spot. Of course he wanted to push her away, but at this moment, he could sense that Leng Yaolai was trembling uncontrollably. He couldn't bring himself to accept her feelings, but he didn't want to hurt her, either. He heaved a faint sigh and gently stroked her long hair in an attempt to soothe her emotions. Unbeknownst to the two of them, there was currently someone appraising them from afar with a furious gaze. As she watched Leng Yaoshu throw her arms around Yan Ming, she was clenching her teeth together so hard that they were on the verge of cracking. All of a sudden, she turned around like a madwoman and ran away toward the darkness. That year, Leng Yaoshu was 29, while Leng Yaolai was 27. After a long while, Leng Yaoshu finally recomposed herself, but her face was as red as a tomato. Thank you for not pushing me away. She lowered her head, and she was blushing all the way down to her neck. However, during the time that she had been in his embrace, she had experienced a sense of warmth and security that she had never felt before. She had already become the supporting pillar of her family, yet just now, she seemed to have found her own supporting pillar. She felt like all of the years she had spent loving Yan Ming in secret were worth it. She wanted to ask for more, but in the end, her rationality held her back. Chapter 1864, Battle between the two phoenixes. She took a deep breath and murmured, I can tell that Yali is the woman you love. She really is the most kind-hearted woman in the world, and she is deserving of your love. Hence, I'm not saying all of this with any expectations. I just couldn't hold back the urge to get all of this off my chest before I turn 30. Please don't give me a response. There's no need to reject me because I already understand everything. I just don't want to hear it from you. Please leave me with this final beautiful memory. Yan Ming opened his mouth to say something, but refrained from doing so in the end. Leng Yaoshu was a smart woman, and it was exactly because of this that she had said what she did. Yan Ming heaved a faint sigh as he shook his head in a full manner. What's so good about me anyway? Leng Yaoshu raised a finger and pressed it against his lips. I told you not to say anything. Please, listen to what I have to say, and once I'm done, I'll leave. Yulai is different from me. Her love for you is more intense than mine. In the eyes of others, she's very extreme in her personality, but I know that her heart is very brittle. She should have been the heir to our family, but our seniors didn't understand her, so they passed the position down to me. She's very vulnerable and requires more care. After you rejected her, it was as if she had become a completely different person. If it's possible, please make some room for her in your heart. Even the tiniest bit of space is fine, as long as you can afford her some love and compassion. She's my little sister, and I don't want to see her continue to be tormented like this. I can sacrifice and discard everything, but I don't want to see her keep living like this. Yan Ming faltered slightly upon hearing this before a wry smile appeared on his face. Leng Yaoshu's face was slightly pale as she continued. I don't know what's come over me today, but this what I've been harboring in my heart all this time. If you can squeeze out any additional love for any other woman, then please give it to Yulai. I beg of you. After that, she extended a deep bow toward Yan Ming before rushing away. The swords of fire and darkness continued to clash, sending violent energy fluctuations surging through the air. Black flames seemed to be burning deep in Leng Yulai's eyes, which were filled with insanity and hatred. Why? You knew I loved him, yet as my sister, you had to try and steal him from me. You already stole the position of family heir from me, but I didn't say anything as you had always been the big sister that's closest to my heart. But I loved him so much, to the point that I was willing to give my life for him. After I was rejected by him, I wanted to die, yet my big sister, the only one who was kind and close to me, betrayed me as well. Why? Why did you do this? Leng Yaoshu's eyes were filled with tears, and her heart was throbbing with agony. She was also yelling with all her might in her own heart. Why? Why did you kill him? We both loved him. Even if he didn't reciprocate your feelings, shouldn't he have at least been a beautiful memory for us? You were the little sister whom I love more than anyone else in this world. Yet you killed the man we both loved. Why did you choose depravity? Why have you destroyed everything? The four swords clashed, and Leng Yaoshu was superior in cultivation rank to Leng Yulai, but the gap in power wasn't very big. However, at their level, the main disadvantage that all evil soul masters had to suffer with was in their battle armor. Leng Yaoshu was wearing a suit of four-word battle armor that had the Leng family had commissioned divine blacksmiths and who would forge after pooling a huge amount of resources, and this was one of the keys to her rise to the position of vice chairman in the spirit pagoda. In contrast, Leng Yulai was only wearing a suit of three-word battle armor, and in this case, where their powers were quite similar, the battle armor disparity was making all the difference. After a few clashes, Leng Yulai began to get forced back into retreat, while bursts of flames began to take shape behind Leng Yaoshu. These flames were her mutated flames after undergoing a second mutation, and they would only appear during the course of battles. They would gradually appear in the shape of water droplets, and she could only conjure up 7 droplets at most, but all of them were extremely powerful. They were given the name Heavenly Phoenix True Fire by her, and they were one of her main trump cards. Her martial soul had only undergone a second mutation after she attained her suit of four-word battle armor, so that was another advantage she had over Leng Yulai. Thus, even though Leng Yulai's attacks were relentless, Leng Yaoshu's assault was only growing more and more powerful. She wasn't just fighting for herself, she was also fighting for all of humanity. She didn't even dare to imagine the heinous crimes that her sister had committed over the years as one of the holy spirit cult's 4 heavenly monarchs. All she wanted now was to be able to capture her and take her back, even if she had to spend the rest of her life atoning for her sister's sins. She didn't want her sister to die on this battlefield. This was why she had challenged Leng Yulai right away. She didn't want anyone else to get to her first and potentially kill her. However, Leng Yulai was completely oblivious to her sister's intentions, and she continued to attack Leng Yaoshu with all her might as the hatred in her heart spiked to a peak. Dark power was erupting incessantly from her dual swords of darkness, and as she retreated, her eyes had already begun to turn a dark purple color. On the main battlefield, there was only one place where no other battles were taking place, and that was the site where Tang Wuling and Demon Sovereign were clashing. As Tang Wuling flew toward Demon Sovereign and faced the purplish golden ball of light that the latter released, the light in his eyes became extremely bright, and as opposed to withdrawing his golden dragon spear, he thrust it directly toward the ball of light up ahead. In the instant that the two of them clashed, the ball of light exploded into viscous liquid like purplish golden light that surged directly toward Tang Wuling. However, Tang Wuling remained completely unflustered as he drew a gorgeous arc through the air with his golden dragon spear. Under the influence of his golden dragon spear, the purplish golden light also formed an arc in midair before being diverted to the side, flying directly toward the abyssal passageway. Demon Sovereign was stunned to see this. She had been using godly power, which was fundamentally different from soul power. If she had to be described in soul master terms, then she was currently at cultivation rank 100. Thus, the fact that Tang Wuling was able to divert her godly power with such apparent ease was astonishing to her. In the world of the sea god's trident, Tang Wuling had fought his father countless times, and after what seemed like an eternity, his battle experience and understanding of unpredictable storm had been raised to completely new levels. The key to this diversion of power was unpredictable storm. Upon landing in the abyssal passageway, the streak of purplish golden light instantly detonated a massive explosion, killing countless abyssal creatures, but unfortunately, all of the slain abyssal creatures merely returned to the abyssal passageway as abyssal energy, not giving Tang Wuling a chance to devour them. In the next instant, Tang Wuling's golden dragon spear had already reached Demon Sovereign, who erupted coldly as she brought her hands together in an attempt to clamp the spear between her palms. Right at this moment, Tang Wuling made a lightning fast adjustment to his thrust, and all of a sudden, it was as if 2 golden dragon spears had appeared, one of which was being withdrawn, while the other was being thrust directly toward Demon Sovereign's lower abdomen. For the first time since attaining godly power, Demon Sovereign felt like she didn't have an advantage in battle. Tang Wuling's battle style appeared to be very simple, but he was completely unaffected by her godly power, and that was downright incredible. Chapter 1865, Battling Demon Sovereign. Clang. Tang Wuling's golden dragon spear struck Demon Sovereign's lower abdomen with unerring accuracy, but the indomitable golden dragon spear was stopped in its path. It seemed to have struck something completely indestructible and was repelled as a result. At the same time, the entire surrounding space turned a purplish golden color, and Demon Sovereign thrust a palm forward. There was no technique to speak of. It was purely an eruption of godly power. From their initial clash, Tang Wuling had already sensed that Demon Sovereign was no longer an ordinary human. Perhaps she hadn't become a deity yet, but her powers had already reached the godly level. His opponent was far more fearsome than he anticipated, but he was also no longer his past self. The attack just now had been unleashed using the golden dragon spear in his right hand, but in the face of Demon Sovereign's palm strike, he lashed out with the sea god's trident in his left hand in retaliation, drawing a circle in midair. Demon Sovereign's palm appeared right at the center of the circle, and as soon as that happened, she felt a burst of enormous suction force appear around her hand, followed following which the godly power imbued within her palm was stripped away. This was a very jarring sensation. The palm strike that she had absolute confidence had suddenly been completely nullified. In the next instant, the giant sea god's trident swept forth, striking directly toward her shoulder. Demon Sovereign's expression changed slightly upon hearing this. She wasn't fazed by being struck by the golden dragon spear, but she definitely didn't dare to allow the vastly renowned sea god's trident to strike her. Purplish golden light flashed, and in the next instant, she appeared behind Tang Wuling. She thrust a finger forward, and the surrounding air was abruptly ejected, transforming the area into a vacuum. Tang Wuling felt his entire body become very sluggish, and his sea god's trident was also faltering in midair. It was as if the world that he was currently situated in no longer accepted him and was rejecting him with all its might. This was a tiny small world that Demon Sovereign had conjured up with her godly power, and in this world, she was the absolute ruler. This was an ability that was far superior to domains, and it could only be unleashed through godly power. Taking advantage of Tang Wuling's sluggishness, Demon Sovereign thrust her finger directly toward his back. However, right at this moment, countless blue silver emperor vines suddenly erupted out of Tang Wuling's back, and an image was also projected into Demon Sovereign's mind. The figure that was locked away deep in her memory vault suddenly appeared before her, dealing upon her a massive psychological impact. The long blue hair, the steady and profound gaze. It was none other than Sea God Tang San. She had never seen Sea God Tang San in person, but as soon as the image appeared in her mind, she immediately recognized it to be Tang San. Aside from him, there was no one else who could possibly bear this appearance. In the next instant, she was struck by the blue silver emperor vines, and her body was sent flying. Tang Wuling swept his sea god's trident through the air to slice through the small world that was restricting him, then turned around to face Demon Sovereign again. Even though he had already reached the pinnacle of the human race, it was not an easy task battling the true god-level Demon Sovereign. If it weren't for the enhancements he had received from the 9 trials of the sea god and the countless battles against his father, perhaps he would have already lost. He finally understood why even the likes of Chen Zhenji and Long Yeyu had perished to this woman. The disorientation in Demon Sovereign's eyes faded, and as she focused her gaze on Tang Wuling again, her eyes were filled with scorching hatred. You must be a descendant of his, right? You bear such a striking resemblance to him. There must be a bloodline connection between the two of you. Looks like I finally found the right person to exact my revenge on. I'm going to kill you to avenge my husband. Demon Sovereign raised her palms toward the heavens as she spoke, and the sky instantly turned a dark purple color. Her aura also began to spike at an astonishing rate. Meanwhile, Tang Wuling pointed his golden dragon spear in Demon Sovereign's direction, while pointing his sea god's trident in the direction of the Arctic Ocean, feeling the blessings of the sea. At this point, he had already pulled out the sea god's trident and become the true heir to the sea god. The sea now existed to serve him, and rich water elemental energy surged toward him from all directions. Even in the northernmost region of the continent, the ice shells were a part of the sea, so all of the ice elements and water elements were injecting themselves into Tang Wuling's body as the purest form of energy. Due to the restriction of the plane, he was unable to attain godhood, but his aura was constantly rising toward the godly level. Meanwhile, the battle between Gu Yuna and the Spirit Sovereign had also commenced. The Spirit Sovereign was constantly flashing through the air, unleashing one powerful spiritual attack after another to combat Gu Yuna's elemental attacks. However, he was unable to get any closer to Gu Yuna. There was constantly an enormous cloud of energy revolving around Gu Yuna, and what he was most wary of was the spatial elements. It was as if there were countless black holes around her, and he could be devoured even with the slightest lapse in focus. In contrast with before, the Spirit Sovereign found his opponent to be far more unfathomable. Her attacks didn't seem to have become much more powerful, but he didn't dare to approach her for some reason. He couldn't understand exactly what had changed, but he knew that something had changed. All types of thoughts were rapidly flying through the Spirit Sovereign's mind, and all of a sudden, a possibility occurred to him. Could it be that his opponent had been hiding her power? This was the only explanation. Even now, there was still a chance that she was hiding her true power. With that in mind, a chill ran down the Spirit Sovereign's spine. Only after arriving in the human world did he come to realize that humans weren't as easy to crush as he had imagined. In the eyes of the abyssal plane, the Douluo plane was on the wane, and thus, the planar ruler's restrictive power on outsiders was very limited. In addition to that, the Holy Spirit cult was helping the abyssal army arrive in this world, so a crushing victory could be immediately secured, and the abyssal plane could expect a massive influx of life energy soon. However, even though the abyssal army had made some progress, the Spirit Sovereign knew from the moment that eternal heaven struck that the human race wouldn't be that easy to defeat. Furthermore, he was extremely wary of Demon Sovereign. He knew that the Holy Lord still wouldn't be able to arrive in this plane. No matter how feeble the planar ruler of the Douluo continent was, there was no way it would allow another planar ruler to enter its territory. At the very most, the Holy Lord would only be able to project a part of his power into this plane, but it would be impossible for him to fully descend as that would lead to his destruction. Under these circumstances, even if they could crush the human race, it would be very troublesome if they couldn't control the Holy Spirit cult. With that in mind, the Spirit Sovereign decided that he had to end the battle here as soon as possible so the abyssal army could begin plundering life energy. With sufficient life energy, there was a chance that he would also be able to reach the true god level, and once that happened, there wouldn't be any further issues. He had absolute confidence that with the assistance of the Holy Lord, he would be able to become the ruler of this world. As for the notion that Gu Yuna was hiding her power, she wasn't the only one. Chapter 1866, Planar Seal. The Spirit Sovereign didn't hesitate any longer as he retreated into the distance, and blue light began to glow from his eyes. Gu Yuna had constantly been keeping tabs on him while also watching the battle between Tang Wuling and Demon Sovereign, preparing to step in at any time, and she hurriedly focused her attention back on the Spirit Sovereign. The Spirit Sovereign's body quickly swelled in size, almost instantly transforming into an abyssal spirit dragon that was around 15 meters in length. This was naturally far smaller than the other abyssal spirit dragon. In fact, the 3 spirit dragon kings were all over 100 meters in length, but upon closer inspection, one would discover that the Spirit Sovereign's abyssal spirit dragon form was of a different color compared to his brethren. His entire body had a turquoise hue, and following his transformation, all of the abyssal energy permeating through the air converged toward him in a frenzy. What was even more concerning for Gu Yuna was that the Spirit Sovereign's power wasn't being enhanced by much, but his spiritual power was spiking at an alarming rate. Even at the divine origin realm, there were naturally also tiers of spiritual power. In the divine realm, there were 4 major spiritual power realms, just like the number of godly tiers. Godly officials corresponded with divine origin realm spiritual, and above godly officials were third rank gods. One of the prerequisites that a third rank god had to satisfy was to reach the third divine origin realm in spiritual power. After that came second rank gods, first rank gods, and god kings. They naturally corresponded to the second divine origin realm, the first divine origin realm, and the god king realm, respectively. Upon reaching the god king realm, one could easily control a plane and could even spread their spiritual power over many planets at once. At this moment, the Spirit Sovereign's spiritual power was rising toward the third divine origin realm. This appeared to only be a slight improvement, but one had to realize that the total amount of spiritual power required to reach from 0 to the divine origin realm could have even reached 10% of the amount of spiritual power required to progress from the divine origin realm to the third divine origin realm. Never did Gu Yuna think that the Spirit Sovereign would still have the ability to enhance his spiritual power further even though he still wasn't even a true god. Furthermore, she was struck by a rather strange feeling. Ever since the commencement of the abyssal plane invasion, the Spirit Sovereign was the only abyssal creature who struck her as a creature that was quite beautiful in appearance. A faint green light was glowing out of its entire body, and every single one of its scales looked as if it had been carved out of the finest jade. Its eyes were also as clear as a pair of gems, and even the purplish black aura of Demon Sovereign was unable to obscure its radiance. It was as if this boost in spiritual power had allowed it to ascend to a whole new level, and even Demon Sovereign couldn't help but have her gaze drawn toward it. Even though both her soul power and spiritual power had reached the godly level, she didn't know what changes would take place once someone reached an even higher level of spiritual power. Furthermore, she had her own objective, and to complete that objective, she had to use the abyssal creatures. If the abyssal creatures, namely the Spirit Sovereign, would become too powerful to control, then that would spell trouble for her as well. Thus, the Spirit Sovereign was thrust firmly under the limelight. Immediately thereafter, all of the concealed abyssal spirit dragons suddenly appeared on the battlefield, and they pressed their bodies against the ground while raising their heads to the heavens, as if they were paying reverence to the Spirit Sovereign. What was even more concerning was that all of these abyssal spirit dragons were also beginning to transform. A layer of turquoise light surfaced over their scales, and it seemed that the transformation that the Spirit Sovereign had undergone was able to trigger a transformation among all of his brethren. The abyssal spirit dragons' auras began to elevate, and in particular, the eyes of the 3 Shrek 6 monsters had all turned turquoise. They had been repressed by Shrek 6 monsters, but following this transformation, they began to give off incredibly powerful auras. Invulnerability mist was released once again, but not to enhance the surrounding abyssal creatures this time. Instead, the mist caused the abyssal creatures to explode, forming a massive reserve of abyssal creatures that was devoured by the spirit dragon kings, causing their bodies to swell drastically in size. Furthermore, all attacks that struck them would simply be repelled, and even Shu Shaoyang's soul skill was cut off by a spiritual attack unleashed by the Spirit Dragon Kings in the form of a roar. Under the leadership of the Abyssal Spirit Dragons, all of the Abyssal creatures quickly launched a counterattack against the human army. This was the true power of the second most powerful being of the Abyssal Plane. The Spirit Sovereign's cold gaze had been fixed on Gyuna's face this entire time, and its aura was constantly fluctuating, striking one with a sense of unpredictability. In the next instant, a giant light pattern appeared above its head, and it was still speaking in human tongue as it declared, "Planar seal." All of a sudden, a massive area around Gyuna and the Spirit Sovereign was plunged into darkness, and from the perspectives of everyone else, a giant ball of black light had suddenly appeared in midair. Within the area encompassed by the ball of light, all elements had disappeared, and Gyuna and the Spirit Sovereign were also concealed within the ball of light. Tang Wuolin was greatly alarmed to see this, yet just as he was about to rush over to assist Gyuna, a voice rang out beside his ears, stopping him cold in his tracks. The voice belonged to Gyuna, and it was a very short message, but it was enough to assuage all of his concern. "Trust me." Having known one another for such a long time, both Tang Wuolin and Gyuna had developed immense trust in each other. Tang Wuolin had wavered in the past, but Gyuna had always won back his trust with her actions, and she had never disappointed him. Thus, immediately upon hearing this, he knew that she was definitely safe. Otherwise, if the two of them were to join forces, they would actually be even more powerful. A full-scale battle commenced once again between the Abyssal Army and the human army, and as the interim commander-in-chief, Zhuang Wanyuan immediately ordered all of the heavy iron laser cannons of the Blood God Legion to be directed toward the Abyssal Spirit Dragons down below in order to suppress them. After being enveloped in the green light, the Abyssal Spirit Dragons had indeed become significantly more powerful. But aside from the Abyssal Spirit Dragon Kings, which had devoured other Abyssal creatures to enhance themselves, the other Abyssal Spirit Dragons were still fighting in much the same style as they had before. Furthermore, their invulnerability mist and light of debilitation had become significantly more powerful, and their spiritual power had also taken a massive leap. But there was one downside, which was that they were no longer able to conceal themselves. Even when they tried to conceal themselves, the green light glowing from their bodies would still be visible, so their location could be easily tracked. The heavy iron laser cannons immediately abandoned the other enemies and began to specifically target Abyssal Spirit Dragons, forcing them to use other Abyssal creatures as meat shields or take evasive measures. At the same time, the infrasonic aircrafts had completely disabled the Hornet Sovereign's Abyssal Bomber Hornets. The invulnerability mist was mainly affecting the battlefield on the ground, and its effects on the aerial battlefield were very limited as the mist would quickly disperse upon rising up into the air. Thus, another impasse ensued. Meanwhile, in the black ball of light on the main battlefield, Gyuna and the Spirit Sovereign were in a world of their own, completely cut off from the outside world. Chapter 1867. I was once at the God King realm. The Spirit Sovereign reverted back into his human form amid a flash of green light, but on this occasion, his entire body was covered in turquoise scales, and his aura had become noticeably more powerful. He was looking at Gyuna with unbridled yearning in his eyes, and he licked his own lips as he said, "I can't directly destroy your plane, but with my third divine origin realm spiritual power, I'm able to temporarily seal this space. All of your abilities rely heavily upon the elements of this plane. Now that the elements are gone, it's time for you to die. No one is going to be able to come and save you, unless someone possesses superior spiritual power to mine. There's no way they'll be able to find you in this space, so you can cease your futile resistance. Soon, you're going to be converted into a part of my body. You also possess divine origin realm spiritual power. Once I devour you, perhaps I would be able to completely stabilize my third divine origin realm spiritual power rather than having to burn through my own life force to maintain it. You are going to be the first significant reward I reap from this world, and to commemorate you, I'll adopt your appearance after I devour you. Come to think of it, you're very beautiful. Your beauty is unique to the human race. My other brethren won't be able to appreciate it, but I like it a lot." The Spirit Sovereign was appraising Gyuna like a cat watching a mouse. In his mind, the outcome of this battle was already a foregone conclusion, and he was already searching for the best place to sink his teeth into in order to devour his prey. However, a peculiar look suddenly appeared on Gyuna's face, and she made an inviting hand gesture as she prompted, "Anything else? Keep going." The Spirit Sovereign faltered slightly upon hearing this. He was saying all of this as a psychological warfare tactic in order to break her down from the inside. Even though Gyuna couldn't draw upon any elements here, she still had her divine origin realm spiritual power, and if she were to detonate her spiritual power at all cost, not only would he not be able to receive any benefit, perhaps he would even be wounded. Thus, he wanted to make Gyuna resign herself to her fate. "You've seen how good I am to my brethren. As I enhance myself, I'll also be helping them. On top of that, I'm not like the other abyssal creatures. I cherish the lives of my brethren and will do everything in my power to protect them. If you choose to follow me and become my servant, I'll let you live and reward you with a position that is second only to my own. On top of that, you may also be able to find a path to reach the third divine origin realm if you follow me. As long as you're willing to offer your soul up to me, I'll help you achieve all of this and preserve your current consciousness. This is your last chance." Gyuna suddenly burst into laughter upon hearing this. "Is that so? This is my last chance? I don't think so. For you, it's far more beneficial to devour me than to take me as your servant. If you devour my spiritual power and life energy, you'll be able to elevate yourself to a higher plane of existence. On top of that, I can tell you that if you really do devour me, even the power of this plane won't be able to continue to restrict you. You'll become a true deity with power superior even to demon sovereigns, and it may well be possible for you to create a divine realm. Under these circumstances, how could you possibly be willing to let me live? You're just worried that I'll sacrifice myself so you won't be able to gain anything." The Spirit Sovereign folded slightly upon hearing this before a cold look appeared in his eyes. "It's not good to be too smart. Looks like I was too naive. How could someone with divine origin realm spiritual power be a gullible fool? In that case, cast aside all pretenses. Even if you choose to self-detonate, your divine sense won't be able to escape from the sealed space, and you'll still be devoured by me. The only difference is that I'll only be able to devour a little less than I otherwise would have. By the way, you say that I'll be able to directly become a deity once I devour you. I'm rather skeptical about that. What gives you that ability? You don't possess godly power. You're just immortal, so devouring you will only elevate my life force." Gyuna chuckled. "Who told you that I'm immortal? Come to think of it, I really have to thank you. In the outside world, I would have to suppress my own power to avoid blowing my cover, but in this perfectly sealed world, there's no need for me to hold back any longer. I haven't even recovered the 1% of the power I possessed at my peak, but you're dreaming if you think a little lizard like you can devour me." A strong sense of foreboding welled up in the Spirit Sovereign's heart upon hearing this. In the next instant, Gyuna's body began to glow with scintillating silver light. Previously, there had been rainbow elemental light shimmering from her silver battle armor, but right now, a layer of circular scales had begun to appear on the surface of her battle armor, as if the battle armor were transforming. Gyuna stretched her body, and even though she clearly hadn't grown any larger, the Spirit Sovereign was struck by the feeling that he was watching an awakening giant dragon. A crystal slowly emerged on Gyuna's forehead, and nine-colored light was swirling within the crystal. As soon as the crystal appeared, the seal that the Spirit Sovereign had created began to tremble, as if it were about to collapse at any moment. His expression changed drastically upon sensing this, and he was rooted to the spot as he appraised the woman before him. "Who are you?" he asked in a stunned voice. Gyuna replied in an indifferent voice, "You don't deserve to know who I am, but seeing as this is the first time in a long time that I've been able to display some of my true power, I'll commemorate the occasion by telling you. In the divine realm, third-rank gods are only positioned slightly above the godly officials at the very bottom. Back when I was still in the divine realm, my spiritual power was at the God King realm." Spiritual fluctuations erupted out of Gyuna's body as she spoke, and the sealed space around her instantly turned from black to silver. At the very least, it was now entirely silver on the inside. In that instant, the Spirit Sovereign was stunned to discover that control over this sealed space had fallen into Gyuna's hands, leaving him completely unable to manipulate it. You. Gyuna smiled and said, "I'm unable to recover my godly powers as I still can't break out of the restrictions of this plane for now. However, in reality, if I wanted to break through these restrictions, nothing would be able to stop me. The ruler of this plane is only a second-rank god, and even though I'm only a part of the God King that was once the god of all soul beasts, I was still a first-rank god. But didn't you say you only had less than 1% of your peak power?" The Spirit Sovereign's voice was already beginning to tremble as he could sense that his opponent's spiritual power was exerting enormous pressure upon him. Gyuna feigned a contemplative expression before a smile appeared on her face. "That may be true, but how much spiritual power would equate to 1% of a first-rank god's spiritual power? It would at least have to be equivalent to the spiritual power of a second-rank god. If it weren't for his sake, I would have already returned to the godly level, but if I were to do that, I wouldn't be able to remain in this world." Chapter 1868. Dragon God's Heart. No, this is impossible. The Spirit Sovereign's expression had already changed drastically at this point. In his eyes, there was no way someone with second divine origin realm spiritual power could exist on the Douluo plane. However, everything around him told him that this was the undeniable reality. His spiritual power was already close to the third divine origin realm, but was being completely overwhelmed from all sides, and he couldn't even resist. If he wanted to truly reach the third divine origin realm, he would have to burn through his own abyssal energy, and after that, it would take him very long to recover, but the recovery process could be sped up if he devoured other powerful abyssal creatures. Thus, he was only close to the third divine origin realm and wasn't actually there yet. However, Yuna's spiritual power had exceeded this level as soon as it had erupted forth, and she had instantly seized control over the sealed space. Nothing is impossible. Do you know why I chatted with you for so long? Yuna asked as she slowly raised her right hand. Her hand gradually transformed into a sharp claw, and it wasn't very large, but as soon as it appeared, it began to release indomitable might that threatened to turn heaven and earth on its head. Why? The Spirit Sovereign asked with a horrified expression. Yuna replied, I only wanted to stall some more time so the humans outside won't be suspicious about how quickly I took care of you. The humans outside? You're not a human, either? The Spirit Sovereign explained. Yuna sighed. I also have a vendetta against the human race, but I'm taking a different approach from your abyssal plane. Your abyssal plane only dared to invade the Douluo continent as the divine realm had disappeared. While it's true that the divine realm has vanished, and even I know where it is, that doesn't change the fact that I'm here. If I wanted to, I could have returned to my peak power a long time ago, and it wouldn't even be impossible for me to create a divine realm. Unfortunately, I met someone who's made things a lot more complicated. Even so, revenge against the human race should be exacted by me, not filthy abyssal creatures like you. What are you? The Spirit Sovereign stared at Yuna's raised right hand as overwhelming waves of horror washed over his heart incessantly. That's not important. I think it's about time now. I don't want him to get worried, so it's time for you to die. She slowly thrust her right hand toward the Spirit Sovereign as she spoke, and the Spirit Sovereign let loose a deranged screech as he detonated his own divine sense with all his might. He knew that this was his last chance to resist, and if he failed, then he would die. However, at the godly level, a gap of even one rank often proved to be an insurmountable rift. All he felt was completely immovable pressure converging toward him from all directions. What was even more alarming to him was that there weren't supposed to be any elements in this sealed space, but all types of elements of an extremely high level of purity had appeared around Yuna. The elements were so dense that they were as viscous as liquid, and they were far superior to the elements that existed on the Douluo plane. The nine-colored crystal that Yuna wore around her neck was glowing with faint light, as if it were calling out to something, and it was also giving off a sense of indescribable and indomitable pride. If Tang Wuolin had been present to see this crystal, then perhaps it would have triggered some memories in his mind. He had seen Yuna once back in the Dragon Valley. At the time, Yuna had obtained the most important artifact left behind by the Dragon God in the Dragon Tomb. This was the core of the entire Dragon clan, the Dragon God's heart. This wasn't the actual heart of the Dragon God. Instead, it was the core of the Dragon God's essence left behind by the Dragon God himself, just like the essence that the Golden Dragon King had injected into Tang Wuolin's body. Unfortunately, even Yuna was unable to absorb its power for herself. She and Tang Wuolin only represented a part of the Dragon God's power individually, and only by combining as one could they truly draw upon the energy of the Dragon God's heart. Having reached the God King realm at the peak of his powers, the Dragon God was the most powerful beast god, and it had taken several God Kings in the divine realm to defeat him. The Dragon God's heart that he left behind was a transcendent divine weapon. Even though Yuna was unable to fuse it with her own body, she was able to draw upon its power to a certain extent. With this transcendent divine weapon in her possession, there was no way that the Spirit Sovereign would have ever been a match for her. The Spirit Sovereign could clearly sense that his divine sense was slowly being compressed inward in an irreversible process, and the immense pressure was only exacerbating his horror. He could feel his own divine sense gradually crumbling away by the second. Not long ago, this woman had been slightly inferior to him in battle, yet now, she was like a high and mighty deity, looking down upon an ant as it slowly perished. He struggled with all his might, but all of his efforts were futile, and he could only look on as his life force slowly faded. Yuna slowly raised her silver dragon spear, and a cold light flashed through her eyes. Boom. An eruption of purplish golden light ignited the entire world, and Tang Wuolin rushed back in retreat to a higher altitude before looking down at Demon Sovereign with a grim expression. His opponent already possessed godly power, and even though she still wasn't a true deity yet, she wasn't all that far off. The most fearsome aspect of godly power wasn't that it was far more fearsome than soul power. Even more importantly, it was able to recover at an astonishing rate. Even as these fierce clashes were taking place, Demon Sovereign's godly power was able to rapidly recover, which meant that Tang Wuolin was constantly facing Demon Sovereign in her peak form. If it weren't for the fact that his sea god's trident posed a threat to his opponent, his situation would most likely be even worse than it was now. He reflexively casted his gaze toward the black space not far away, and he could sense that something within that space seemed to be attracting him, and this attraction wasn't coming from Yuna. This was a very strange feeling that manifested itself in the form of intense yearning. Demon Sovereign was also looking up at Tang Wuolin, and she was quite surprised by how their battle had progressed thus far. To think that a human could still contend with her even after she became a true god, this would be utterly unthinkable if it weren't for the fact that this was a reality. She had thought that Chen Xingji had already reached the very pinnacle of human capabilities, but Tang Wuolin with his sea god's trident was proving to be an even more difficult opponent. However, at the same time, she was quietly confident. At the very least, she wasn't facing sea god Tang San, and she had nothing to fear as long as her opponent was still a human. At this point, all of the other battles were quite balanced. On the main battlefield, Yoli's powerful holy soul skills were able to enhance all allies while weakening all opponents. Tang Wuolin raised his sea god's trident once again, and he released his divine sense to encompass the entire battlefield. Right at this moment, a strange scene unfolded. All of a sudden, the abyssal spirit dragons that were running rampant on the battlefield abruptly shattered before exploding violently into massive plumes of dense abyssal energy. Even the three abyssal spirit dragon kings were unable to escape this fate. At the same time, a deafening boom rang out within the abyssal passageway, and the entire northernmost region trembled violently. The abyssal passageway began to warp, and a huge number of abyssal creatures that were in the process of rushing out of the passageway exploded into abyssal energy. But the abyssal passageway seemed to have temporarily lost the ability to recover the abyssal energy, so the energy merely drifted along through the air. At the same time, that inky black space exploded into a vast expanse of black light. Chapter 1869, She won. The explosion shook virtually the entire northernmost region, and everyone's attention was instantly drawn to it. The ones that were most heavily affected were the abyssal emperors and sovereigns present. They were experiencing a type of fear that was originating from the very core of their being. Massive turmoil had arisen in the abyssal plane, and it was so severe that it had affected the foundation of the entire plane. An instant ago, they hadn't completely realized what was happening. All they felt was this sense of overwhelming horror. However, in the instant after the inky black space exploded, a sense of foreboding immediately welled up in their hearts. Tang Wuolin's golden dragon spear had already begun to greedily devour the extremely rich abyssal energy in the air without requiring any prompting from him. Due to the massive number of abyssal creatures that had just perished in the abyssal passageway's temporary inability to recover abyssal energy, the entire abyssal plane was in a state of turmoil, and there was an enormous amount of abyssal energy permeating through the air. Due to the sudden massive influx of abyssal energy, the golden dragon spear had become scorching hot to the touch. Right at this moment, a figure appeared in the distant sky. The silver light shining from her body seemed to be a little dim, and as she fully emerged before everyone, her aura seemed to be a little frail as well. However, the spear in her grasp was plunged deep into a body that was slowly shriveling up, and bursts of energy were being injected into her body. She won. Tang Wuolin was ecstatic to see this. If it weren't for the threat of Demon Sovereign, he would have already rushed over to her and swept her up in a tight embrace. Yuna turned to face him, and even though her face was slightly pale, she gave him a gentle smile, revealing 2 rows of pristine white teeth. Tang Wuolin also smiled as he raised his golden dragon spear and gave her a thumbs up. There was no need for verbal communication between the two of them, just a look was enough. In the next instant, Tang Wuolin's aura erupted forth like a tsunami wave. Nothing could invigorate him more than seeing Yuna defeat and kill the Spirit Sovereign. Following Yuna's victory, he wouldn't have to worry about her battle any longer, and the cause behind the massive tremors from the abyssal plane also became clear. The Spirit Sovereign had been slain by Yuna, and the second level of the abyssal plane had collapsed as a result, thereby causing such a violent change. The collapse of the second abyssal level affected the foundation of the entire abyssal plane. In the instant that all of the abyssal spirit dragons perished, the tables were instantly turned on the battlefield. battlefield. It could be said that Dou had just completed a monumental feat by killing the spirit sovereign, and it seemed to be a harbinger of good fortunes for the human army. Demon Sovereign's brows were tightly furrowed as she looked on with a stunned expression. Tang Wuolin had already given her a huge shock, yet now, Dou had also performed a miracle on the battlefield. It appeared that Dou was extremely taxed or perhaps had even been severely wounded, but for some reason, Demon Sovereign was struck by an overwhelming sense of unease at the sight of her. The spirit sovereign had clearly already released all of the power that he had been concealing, and he had even trapped her within that space of his. In that instant, Demon Sovereign could sense that the divine sense released by the spirit sovereign was superior even to her own. However, in such a short time, the spirit sovereign had already been slain. How was this possible? What exactly had happened during the course of that battle? The powerful beings of the human army weren't aware of exactly which level the spirit sovereign came from, but she certainly did. In the abyssal plane, he was second only to the Holy Lord, and he was known as the abyssal plane's beacon of wisdom. Furthermore, he was the true commander of the abyssal army during this invasion, and no matter how Demon Sovereign thought about it, she simply couldn't understand how the spirit sovereign had fallen so quickly without even being able to get away. Surely the collapse of the second abyssal level was a loss so heavy that even the Holy Lord would be struggling to handle the repercussions. Most importantly, how had that human devoured him? She was going to devour him for herself. In her eyes, all of the abyssal creatures were going to act as sustenance for the divine realm that she was going to create. So she was both stunned and furious that the spirit sovereign had been killed by Dou. Just the spirit sovereign alone was equivalent to a third of the abyssal army. She cast a cold gaze toward Tang Wuolin, and the purplish golden aura around her instantly began to surge violently as she let loose a long cry before flying toward Tang Wuolin like a speeding arrow. Tang Wuolin swept his sea god's trident through the air in an arc in retaliation. Tang Wuolin was the only one buoyed by Dou's miraculous feat. All of the powerful beings of the spirit pagoda were also letting loose thunderous cheers. They didn't know who the spirit sovereign was, but it was apparent to everyone that he was the most important commander of the abyssal army. Without the spirit sovereign and those abyssal spirit dragons, the overall power of the abyssal army would take a massive hit. Even more importantly, the one who had killed the spirit sovereign was their newly appointed chairwoman. The only one who wasn't pleased with this turn of events was Dou. How could he have been willing to hand over the position of chairman to Dou? Furthermore, after she became chairwoman, her attitude toward him had completely changed, and his own grandson was still following her around every day like a hopelessly enamored puppy. Upon witnessing the power that Dou had displayed, particularly her divine origin realm spiritual power, Dou was completely astonished, and at the same time, he knew that he would most likely never be able to recover his position as chairman. In addition to that, she had just killed the spirit sovereign, making the most important contribution on this battlefield out of anyone by far, and her status was instantly raised to unprecedented heights in both the military and the spirit pagoda. This was naturally fantastic for the spirit pagoda. Dou had won over everyone with her heroic display and fortified the spirit pagoda's position on the continent. Even Shrek Academy would have to give up on trying to exact revenge on the spirit pagoda. The most it would be able to do would be to target the Kyangi family. However, this wasn't good news for Dou. The more power that Dou displayed, the more useless he would look as the last chairman. However, it wasn't like there was anything he could do about this. Right now, all he could do was heave a forlorn internal sigh. Dou had concealed her own abilities far too well. He had always been aware that she was developing very quickly and was clearly a brilliant prodigy, but never did he think that she would leave him in the dust so quickly. With her divine origin realm spiritual power and quasi-god level combat prowess, even his own father would most likely be no match for her. Only after becoming the chairwoman of the spirit pagoda did she display her true power, so it was clear that she had been plotting this for a long time. If the human race could survive this ordeal, then the entire spirit pagoda would most likely undergo a massive revolution once she returned. Dou had thought that Dou would only be a puppet chairwoman that he could control, and that once they returned to the spirit pagoda, he would be able to assume control once again from the shadows. He didn't even mind allowing her to continue as chairwoman, as long as she followed all of his instructions. What difference did it make? However, all of this was nothing more than a distant dream now. It was clear that he had been far too optimistic. Dou's performance had already drawn all of the powerful beings of the spirit pagoda to her side, and it was clear that he had already been completely undermined. Chapter 1870, Clashing Phoenixes. What are you doing? Hurry up and fight. A low roar rang out beside Dou ears, snapping him out of his train of thought. He turned around to find his own father glowering at him with an expression of fierce disapproval, as if to ask, have you not made enough of a fool of yourself already? Dou took a deep breath to compose himself. This wasn't indeed not the time to be thinking about anything else other than the battle at hand. As for Dou, he could only hope that she would extend some compassion to the Kyangi family due to her relationship with Kyangi's Hanting. If only Kyangi's Hanting had married her earlier, perhaps they could have already had a child together, and none of this would be an issue. Boom. A violent explosion suddenly rang out, drawing Dou's attention. He was then greeted by the sight of two figures emerging from the epicenter of the explosion before rising up straight into the heavens. These were a pair of giant phoenixes, one of which was burning with scorching white flames, while the other was completely enveloped in purplish black flames. As the two rose up into the sky, they were attacking one another incessantly, releasing their flames to erode one another. These two were none other than the heavenly phoenix Douluo and the dark phoenix Douluo. Throughout this entire battle, Leng Yaoshu held a slight upper hand over her sister, but she couldn't bring herself to kill her beloved sister. Thus, even though she was clearly superior in power, she was still unable to cement her victory. At this moment, Leng Yulai released her martial soul true body, and she was also forced to do the same. From down below, Dou was just in the right position to see that there was a very discreet streak of dark red light on Leng Yulai's back. His heart jolted slightly upon seeing this, and he reflexively wanted to alert Leng Yaoshu to this, but in the next instant, a thought suddenly occurred to him, and he refrained from saying anything as he quickly rushed toward the abyssal army in the distance. Dou lowered her silver dragon spear to her side, and at this point, the spirit sovereign's body had already disappeared. All of his energy had been devoured by the silver dragon spear. Just now, she had suddenly been struck by a sense of foreboding. She still hadn't returned to the peak of her spiritual power, but having returned to the divine origin realm, she could still clearly sense some things around. Someone had to have been thinking about her just now, and their thoughts had to have been quite malicious. She reflexively cast her gaze toward Dou. Was it him? Right at this moment, an anguished cry suddenly rang out in the sky, and Dou reflexively looked upward. At this point, the two giant phoenixes had already risen to an altitude of several thousand meters, and at this moment, one of Leng Yaoshu's talons had plunged into Leng Yulai's chest. It seemed that Leng Yulai hadn't resisted the attack in the slightest, yet the anguished cry had come from Leng Yaoshu. Just as the two of them were exchanging blows while flying up into the sky, Leng Yulai suddenly abandoned all defense without any warning. At their level, even if Leng Yaoshu weren't fighting at her full capacity, her attacks were still of the limit Douluo level, and she wasn't able to just reverse them at will. Thus, her talon had torn straight into Leng Yulai's chest. However, right after she let loose that anguished cry, a streak of dark red light suddenly flashed past, plunging itself into Leng Yaoshu's lower abdomen. Leng Yaoshu reeling from the massive pain and remorse of harming her beloved sister, and she didn't even consider that Leng Yulai would suddenly attack her at a time like this. There was no pain, only a bone-chilling sensation that spread through her entire body. Her eyes widened as she stared at her sister, and the two of them both returned to their human forms. A short red sword had been stabbed into Leng Yaoshu's lower abdomen, and in the blink of an eye, Leng Yaoshu's entire body had turned a dark red color. After that, the short sword simply melted away. Ha 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 ha. Leng Yulai began to cackle with glee and resentment as she appraised Leng Yaoshu with hatred in her eyes. Your heart is still as soft as ever. I knew you would be like this. This divine demonic sword is something I prepared just for you. It's a disposable divine weapon, and even a god won't be able to save you now. You're dead for sure. Leng Yaoshu stared blankly at her own sister, seemingly unable to feel any pain. Do you hate me that much? Leng Yulai spat in a vicious voice. That's right. I hate you. I detest you. You took everything from me. You were the one who made me like this, the one who forced me to turn to the darkness. It's all your fault. I wanted to kill you a long time ago. I hate Yan Ming, but I hate you even more. I knew I couldn't beat you, but I also knew that your feigned kindness would give me this opportunity. And now, I finally succeeded. Leng Yaoshu slowly closed her eyes as she withdrew her hand from her sister's chest instead of landing the killing blow. All right, perhaps this is a form of release for me as well. Yulai, all I want to tell you is that you've always been a sister to me in my heart. Scorching white flames rose up as Leng Yaoshu gently pushed Leng Yulai away. Her hand pierced through Leng Yulai's chest, and in that instant, she had even physically touched Leng Yulai's heart, but she stopped herself just in the nick of time to spare her sister. However, the wound that she had sustained was lethal. The divine demonic sword was the most vile weapon developed by the Holy Spirit cult, and it was imbued with the toxins of countless vengeful spirits, making it capable of cursing and devouring even one's soul. Leng Yaoshu's eyes had already turned grey, and her life force was receding at a rapid rate. The divine demonic sword was capable of casting the ultimate curse that even Yali couldn't remedy. Teacher. Gu Yuna finally arrived with a grief-stricken cry, and she caught Leng Yaoshu in her arms, completely disregarding the scorching white flames that were lapping at her body. Tears were flowing uncontrollably down her face. She had known Leng Yaoshu from a very young age. At the time, it was her who had given Gu Yuna a place to stay after she had left Tang Wulin's family. Leng Yaoshu had no children herself, nor had she ever married anyone, and she treated Gu Yuna like her own daughter, teaching her and watching her grow. Tang Wulin was the first person to make Nai develop human emotions, while Leng Yaoshu was the first person to do the same for Gu Yue. Leng Yaoshu turned to Gu Yuna, and despite her condition, she was smiling. It's all right, don't be sad. Perhaps this is the best ending for me. Ever since Yang Ming passed away, I've wanted to follow him to the other side. Looks like I'll be going there before Yali. Perhaps I'll be able to find him before her. Look, he's just over there, isn't he? She raised a finger to point up at the sky, and a projection appeared in the midair. As it did so, a large area of space began to warp slightly. The projection depicted Leng Yaoshu in her youth, standing with her head lowered in a hesitant display. Standing before her was none other than Atlas Douluo Yanning. The scorching white flames around Leng Yaoshu's body began to burn even more fiercely, as if she were trying to release her final radiance to completely cleanse her own body and soul. Through her unreserved efforts, the mental manifestation in the sky began to produce sound. The sound was echoing through the air, attracting everyone's attention. Thanks so much for watching this video. Don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe. Also leave a comment down below with suggestions on what novels to read.